him enough energy. So I reached out to Dr. James Loomis, a team physician who was part of 2 championships, a World Series and a Super Bowl.
What I found in the locker room was some pretty outdated ideas about nutrition. You would go to a pre-game dinner with the football team and you would see this spread. There would be steak and chicken, very much protein-oriented, because their perception was that the protein is what sustains their energy. But in fact, that's not the case. The actual energy for exercise comes mainly from carbohydrates in the form of glycogen that we store in our muscles. And when we sacrifice those carbohydrate calories for protein calories in our diet, what ends up happening is you will develop really chronic carbohydrate or glycogen depletion. And what does that lead to? Well, it leads to chronic fatigue and loss of stamina.
I wanted to know how this whole meat gives you energy thing got started, and traced it back to the 1800s when a famous German chemist hypothesized that muscular energy came from animal protein and that vegetarians were incapable of prolonged exercise. Liebig's beliefs were so widely accepted that they even inspired the USDA's first protein recommendations. By the time science proved his theory false with the discovery that hardworking muscles run primarily on the carbohydrates found in plants, it was too late. People all around the world had already bought into Liebig's ideas about meat and energy. But not everyone was convinced. As early as 1908, plant-based athletes were starting to claim their first Olympic golds.
Are you still sticking to your vegetarian diet, Mary?
Very rigidly, yes.
And do you find that's a benefit to you, do you?
Greatly, or I wouldn't do it.
Winning the gold medal. Lewis gets it, and it's a new world record as well.
I changed my diet to a vegan diet, and I set all of my personal bests at 30 years old.
The oldest man ever to win a world or Olympic medal.
And there were current Olympians too. Morgan Mitchell is the 2-time Australian 400-meter champion.
Here comes Morgan Mitchell. Champion, this is very, very fast.
It's tough, the 400, I won't lie. The first 200 is pure speed, and then the last 200, it shows who's got that speed endurance training in their legs. And obviously the last 50, you've just got to pray because lactic is hitting hard. You need to be able to hold that endurance.
She also represented Australia at the 2016 Summer Olympics.
A lot of people had doubted me when I first became vegan, but my energy levels increased incredibly. And my iron, my B12, everything that people said would become deficient were amazing. I thought, I'm going to make sure I'm beating them all on the track. I mean, we're all friends, but it was pretty cool to finish my Australian domestic season undefeated. And to win the Nationals was obviously that little cherry on top.
Morgan Mitchell, she's tearing away from the field.
There was also Dotsie Bausch, an 8-time USA national cycling champion and 2-time Pan American gold medalist.
My event in track cycling requires a massive amount of explosive power.
Let's go, ladies. Go, go, go.
First of all, we have to get off the line, and we're starting from a dead start with 1 gear. We have to be able to move that mass, that weight, off the line and get it up to speed within 3/4 of the length of the track. My training regimen involved 6 days a week, climbing mountains up and down for at least 4 and 5 hours a day, hard track sessions, and then big gym sessions. I grew up in Kentucky, so that's the land of casseroles and barbecue and meat. So when I transitioned over to an entirely plant-based diet, I wasn't sure if I was gonna survive. And I actually became like a machine. I got up from being able to move about 300 pounds on the inverted leg sled to moving 585 pounds, 60 reps, times 5 sets.
To move that kind of weight, you need more than just energy. You also need strength. In other words, protein. I just couldn't believe that Dotsie, or anyone for that matter, could get enough protein eating only plants.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions in sports nutrition is that we have to have animal protein, and in particular meat, to get big and strong and perform at a high level. That's just clearly not true. All that protein that you get when you eat a steak or a hamburger, where did it come from? It came from the plants that the cow ate.
I was surprised to learn that all protein originates in plants. Cows, pigs, and chickens, it turns out, are just the middlemen. In fact, the largest study to compare the nutrient intake of meat eaters with plant eaters showed that the average plant eater not only gets enough protein, but 70% more than they need. Even meat eaters like me get roughly half of their protein from plants. But athletes need more protein than most people do. So I crunched the numbers from the study and realized that based on the amount of calories I was eating, I'd still be getting more than enough protein to build and maintain muscle. For example, 1 cup of cooked lentils or a peanut butter sandwich has about as much protein as 3 ounces of beef or 3 large eggs. But what about the quality of the protein? I'd always heard that plant-based protein was inferior.
Proteins are strings of amino acids, and there's some amino acids our bodies can't make. Those are the essential amino acids. So we have to get them from food. And one of the arguments about animal-based proteins being superior is that plant-based proteins aren't complete, so you're not going to get all the amino acids, and that's a fallacy as well.
Again, I was surprised to discover that every single plant contains all the essential amino acids in varying proportions. And when it comes to gaining strength and muscle mass, research comparing plant and animal protein has shown that as long as the proper amount of amino acids are consumed, the source is irrelevant. This all sounded great in theory, but all the athletes I'd met so far were pretty lean. If getting lots of protein without animal foods really wasn't an issue, where were all the big guys? Kendrick Ferris was the only male weightlifter to represent the United States at the 2012 and 2016 Olympic Games.
Olympic style weightlifting is going from the ground to overhead in 1 or 2 explosive movements, the most explosive movements that can be done. When I made the switch to a plant-based diet, they were like, I don't know how you're gonna lift that much weight and you're not gonna be eating anything, you're just gonna eat grass, like how are you gonna be strong? I qualified for my 3rd Olympic team, you know what I'm saying? I broke 2 American records. I won the Pan Am Games. I was like, man, like I think I should have done this a long while ago. Like, why didn't I research this before?
And Kendrick wasn't alone. 5,000 miles away, I found another strength athlete named Patrick Baboumian.
Long bandits!
Patrick is one of the strongest men on the planet, with multiple world records, including the front hold, the keg lift, and the log lift. How could one of the world's strongest men be so powerful, eating only plants? No meat, no milk, no eggs.
Most of the training I do at home because it's just more practical.
Someone asked me, how could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And my answer was, have you ever seen an ox eating meat?